Resource Center South Atlantic here in Raleigh. He's been an advocate for children and families for over 38 years. Mr. Byrd is a highly regarded independent African-American leader of thought change and empowerment. He's provided consultation, training, and facilitation in developing programs and policies that impact children and families across the United States. Mr. Byrd spent 20 years at Wake County Human Services, where he managed a comprehensive service delivery system for children and their families. He organized an array of social work staff, including the Family Team Decision-Making Group, as well as other clinical staff and related human services programs. He currently co-chairs the annual North Carolina Fatherhood Conference, and Mr. Byrd holds a master's in public administration from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. So welcome, Mr. Byrd. And last but not least, we have Mr. Antoine Arnold of Omni Kids. He currently serves as an executive director at the Wake County location. In this position, he serves children and youth who face challenges with problematic behaviors, mental health concerns, and learning disabilities. With over 20 years as a child advocate, Mr. Arnold continues to evolve and expand his leadership towards empowering youth. He is the proud husband of Ebony and the father of Aubrey and Aaron. Mr. Arnold is a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, where the motto is service to all mankind. And he holds a Master's of Science in Human Behavior. So welcome, Mr. Arnold. So again, we thank all of our panelists for being here tonight. We want to ask all of our participants to make sure that you remain muted throughout the conversation. If you have questions, you can add those questions to the chat box. And once we kind of get through the list of questions that we've initially developed, we will make sure that we begin to answer the questions from the chat. So as we think about the term fathers tonight and father involvement, we're being all encompassing. We know that there's no one true definition of what it means to be a father. So when we talk about dads, we'll be talking about biological fathers, stepfathers, social fathers, custodial fathers, non-custodial fathers. We know that there are many individuals who represent what it means to be a father. And so just want to make sure that we make it aware that everybody that we're being completely inclusive in that terminology on tonight. So to get started, I want to give a question to all of our panelists, and we can start in whatever order you so choose. But if everyone can kind of just give an answer to tell us how you began your work as an advocate for fathers, particularly as it relates to their role in their children's education.
All right. Hello, everyone. Antoine Arnold here. I think for me, it started off as me becoming a father, for one, and stepping into that role. Right now, I have the passion of working with youth and actually started my undergrad years. However, once I became a father, it just changed my whole world and opened my eyes up a lot. And it really took me back to those that paid, really set the foundation of my life and paved the way for me. As you were saying, there were many men who took on a father role and helping me become the individual I am today. So I think with that, all of the lessons learned, experience shared, it actually propelled me into being what I think, you have to ask my wife that, but I'm pretty sure I'm doing a good job of being an awesome dad. And it all comes from those that I'm standing on the shoulders of that really set the pave the way for me.
Well, I guess I'll go next. Again, Derek Byrd. Thank you for this opportunity to participate on this illustrious panel tonight. I really started this work from when I was in New York. I lived in Mount Vernon, New York, and shortly after high school, and I won't say what year that was, I recognized, as I was getting involved in the community, I recognized the importance of parents being involved in their children's education, and had begun to do some organizing around that with other groups, and ended up getting into the Parent-Teacher Association. Now, I was not a parent at that time, but the membership is open to anyone, regardless of whether you're a parent or not. And through my 36 years in that association, from the local unit in Mount Vernon all the way to North Carolina and to the national board, my goal had always been to advocate for involvement of fathers in the education of their children, because we really saw a lack of fathers engaged at that level. And luckily, PTA at that time was very interested in wanting to increase their membership and their engagement of fathers across all of the school systems that we had PTA units in. So that kind of started that work for me. And then, of course, in all of the work that I've done in various different organizations, I always made sure that part of my agenda and part of my advocacy was around engaging parents, but particularly fathers. And so that is how we got to the Fatherhood Conference that we've been hosting at Family Resource Center for 8 years. We started this work with engaging fathers when I was at Wake County Human Services. And then the Family Resource Center was fortunate to garner a $5 million 5-year grant to do a responsible fatherhood program called Day-to-Day Dads in Wake, Durham, and Edgecombe County. So, so the work is important, and I continue to move forward in assuring that we fully engage dads in their children's education and in every aspect of their children's lives and their family lives here in North Carolina.
I think I can go next. When I think about the seeds of my work, I guess I see it originating in a couple of spaces. Primarily, kind of reflecting on my father and, the impact that he's had on me, and just kind of remembering conversations from a very early age about, the importance of, being a father, fathers in the community that I grew up in, the African-American community. And like many others, just, the broad definition of what it means to be a father and invest in, the lives of children. When I think about my uncles, the coaches, and, my father, and how they all kind of influenced me, it just kind of puts something in your head that you can aspire to. Like I said, I didn't have children at a very early age, but, was very aware of the responsibility that was involved with all of that. And so that's the first seed that I can think of. The second is when I began teaching, and still didn't really have children of my own, but I began to kind of see how parents and fathers in particular could shape what happens in the classroom. And even to this day, I still feel like that's an untapped resource that educators don't use enough. And not necessarily from a disciplinary standpoint, but when parents are informed, when fathers are informed about what's going on in the classroom and they're invested in that, there are always positive outcomes for children. But since beginning my teaching career, just blessed enough to have 2 young girls, and that's a whole nother dimension of how real life becomes, and the role of fatherhood, and how necessary it is for the the development of our children. So when I think about the seeds, one is more about how I grew up, and the other is more about my teaching career and just being a father to my own children.
Thank you.
I'll kind of wrap up this first question. Very much like Rodney said, when you're a public school teacher, you kind of take on the role of parent of so many of those kids. And, it really started being an advocate 33 years ago when I had that first classroom. I've counted up about 1,000 kids probably throughout my career. And you can't be an advocate for the kids without being an advocate for the family unit and for the parents, and the important role that the fathers play in developing and supporting the school community. I've whether I was in the rural Appalachian coalfields of Southern West Virginia, or the urban district of Greensboro, where I just wrapped up my last tenure of teaching. It's the role of the parent, particularly the father, is such an important piece there. And the parent involvement is so critical. Our parents are there every day for their kids. And I always tell people about the parent involvement may look different in different communities, but we also know the impact of the current situation of COVID. We know of poverty plays an impact as well on the time and the role that communities and parents can play in involving having that role with the teacher. But as an advocate for public education, I always tell, every parent that I've ever talked to, and I would say this to mothers and to fathers, the most important relationship in that school community is the relationship between the teacher and the parent, and in this instance here, the father. And that role, just like Rodney was saying, is really that untapped potential. And I'm so glad that Dr. Coupe, you talked about the broad definition of what fatherhood could be to so many of our kids out there is critical. So I continue to raise my voice, and in whatever role I've been in as a public education advocate. But when you advocate for the child, you also advocate for the community and for the parental unit, and fathers play that critical role in that community.
Thank you all for kind of giving us that background. Everyone didn't share the number of years that they had in the professional setting, kind of working with fathers and families. But using my math, for the two that did share, we have over 70 years of collective experience working with fathers and families and kind of engaging around these issues. And so as we kind of think about the historical perspective, we know that traditionally many underrepresented fathers have not been seen in a very positive light, particularly when we think about engaging with service systems, such as educational systems, such as human service systems. How do you all think the trend is changing, or the tide may be turning in terms of public perception of fathers? We know that in terms of the research area, there's more work now on engagement of non-resident fathers or non-custodial fathers, and we see more about the ways in which dads are involved in the day-to-day lives of their children. What perspective do you all have on that changing tide?
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Can y'all hear me?
We can. Who's joining us?
Hi, this is Harrison Spencer Jr. I am the creator of Father Figures here in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm glad that you brought that up because...
Uh-oh. 1 second. We would ask that all of our participants, if you could continue to mute yourselves. These initial questions are going to be directed towards our 4 panelists to begin with. And if you have any questions or comments that you want to include in the chat. Oh, no problem. Welcome to the community, right? But if you want to put that thought in the chat, we can definitely come back around to it. So I'll pose that initial question to kind of think about the changing tide of perception of fathers to our panel. And perhaps we can start with Mr. Jewell, and if any other panelist wants to step in to answer that question.
Sure. I think, obviously, I think that the role of the father is, speaking from my own experience of 33 years, I've always deemed them as a critical role in the family community there. And my experience, particularly in all of my experience at 33 years, I've taught in what's Title I school. So they've been, it's mostly been in high poverty areas. And I've been so encouraged about when we have those open houses, when we have those parent conferences, when we have the IEP meetings. I've been so encouraged to see that it's the mom and dad usually coming together as that critical unit to help support both of the kids. The children love it when the father comes into the room, whether it's being a lunch buddy, not only to their child, but maybe into some other classmates there who may not have a father figure at home at the time. So, I think my experience with the parental role and the fatherhood role is that it's always been critical, it's always been valuable, it's been present, and I am encouraged that the role of the father is continuing to be in whatever definition of that father is in the family unit.
I think I can add to that a little bit. I'm not exactly sure in terms of what the trends are in terms of perceptions of fathers, but what I do know is that often the perception of fathers, particularly in marginalized communities, are often inaccurate or incomplete. we often think about fatherhood, whether we're good or bad at it, as, what we can provide for our families. And there's certainly value in that. But we all know that there are systems and structures that, impact one's capacity to provide, whether we're talking about employment, wealth creation, food insecurity, healthcare, all the things that we talk about. And so I think it's important to kind of recognize that, we all kind of understand the importance and the role of being a father, but particularly in marginalized communities, I think they're examined more. They're, the pathology of fathers are kind of, put in the news and, written about, particularly in, like I said, in marginalized communities. So we need to, focus that same energy on, studying and examining the systems that don't allow fathers or, families in general to thrive. But again, you can hear in the news or see in the news and, some of those stereotypical ways that we describe fatherhood in marginalized communities still persist, and they're strong. And so we have to do an effective job of, accurately framing what it means to be a father in those spaces.
I totally agree with that. Mr. Bird, I was going to jump to you with that same question, particularly because your agency hears a lot from fathers who may be in a situation similar to what Dr. Trice just explained. So sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, I think that there had been a narrative about dads that, that we have been weighted under for so long and that other folks have embraced. And I think there have been a number of us who have now taken that narrative and are changing it. And I think that's how we are creating the perception that you're seeing now, because we are now telling the story and we're putting it out there that, we were not who people thought we were as dads, or that dads were not deadbeats. I really do not like that term deadbeats at all. But I think that, the narrative and the perception that have been painted by other people, we are now taking that over and we are now promoting a different reality to our communities and to other folks about, what fathers are really doing and how well they are engaging and involving and being involved with their children. And I just think that there's systems that are going to take a little longer in getting caught up with, accepting that narrative. I think that there is some benefit to folks to maintain that narrative about dads, and particularly dads of color. But I think we have to just keep advocating and keep pushing and, and helping dads to also own that narrative themselves, and that they have to understand that they are not who folks say they are, and that they are much more than what people believe they can be. And so, and that's a lot of what we have tried to instill with the dads that we've worked with, over almost 800 or so dads that we worked with in 5 years. They come out more empowered and have a sense of in belonging and that they own their narrative. And that's what we want dads to do, is to own their narrative, so that that is not a perception that continually is promoted and projected in the community.
And Mr. Arnold, would you like to offer any follow-up to that? Kind of thinking about your role as a father of two?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I'm following after Dr. Bird there, but what he said on the narrative, nothing motivated me more than growing up and hearing all of the XYZs, I call them, all the stereotypical views of dads and father figures and so forth. That really motivated me to step in when I became a father, to just give it my all. It's been an amazing experience, but I must say that I had a similar conversation with a good friend, some good friends of mine, and we were talking about the same situation. And the thing about it is, see, I'm an 80s baby, and I see a trend right now amongst us men that, as we became fathers, it's like, that's the best thing ever. And we're actually embracing that. And it's almost like as soon as you look on social media to see that and to know like, hey, I remember this guy when I was in middle school, and now we're all dads and we're happy and we're showing off the kids' pictures and so forth. And I think seeing things like that is what's really, starting to catch on, and a lot of folks are starting to embrace it more as, when they step into that fatherhood role. And having those supports around you, like you said, those custodial fathers and uncles and, all those people who are great influences in your life that really, work with you, support you for every step of the way. Like, it goes a long way. So in my role, that's what I make sure with the kids that I work with. Like, I'm whatever they need me to be. So I'm not real big on titles in my program. They know me as Coach Twan, Mr. A, what have you. But at the end of the day, I'm whoever they need me to be. So I'm uncle sometimes. I call them my nephews just to keep it going. But I think for a lot of these students that we work with, to have a male figure in their lives and basically supporting them is what's really gonna, continue to inspire more great dads, or to become more great dads, I'll say. And I think it really is, it's leading by example. It's really, that's the thing for me. That's what caused me to be, the person that I am. So just leading by example, and again, seeing it is believing it. So I continue to repeat, nothing is more inspiring to me, and everybody knows me know how much I value my family and love my family. But when I see those that I grew up with doing the same thing, like it's like it keeps us, structured and making sure that we're walking that straight, that narrow path into fatherhood.
Oh, thank you all. And I think your collective comments all spoke to this idea of fathers having various roles in terms of education. And so when we use the term education, folks might sometimes think, well, we're only thinking about education in the context of the classroom. But as we heard all of you kind of speak to this idea that education can take place on social media. So a dad observing another dad's interaction with his children and that being a source of education, or fathers showing up in the classroom, volunteering to assist students, fathers taking their kids out to the museum or for sports or bike rides, whatever that may be on the weekends. And so we know now that we've moved into this new era of remote formal education, given the current global pandemic that we're all impacted by. And so when you all think about what fathers are having to adapt to in terms of our new normal, what can fathers do to help their children in this remote learning space, via the time that they're actually online and learning or co-teaching with the teachers, and also kind of thinking about what happens when they're not online and engaging with their children's education? Maybe we'll start with Dr. Trice.
Sure. Yeah. I think the pandemic in many ways have, it just created a new reality for us. But in the end, I was talking to my father earlier, and he said, pandemic doesn't really change what it means to be a father. You have to be present, and in many ways that's true. But when I think about, what parents need or fathers need to adapt to this new normal, I think from a schooling standpoint, and I know Mark can appreciate this, parents are our students' first teachers. We often say that in education, right, Mark? And so we have to kind of go back to what we know in terms of making sure that our children have all the resources that they need to be successful. And again, all of that is shaped by, the resources that we have as families. Making sure that kids are mastering the material. And all of that is about being present, encouraging productive struggle. These are the type of things that parents will have to adapt to as co-teachers. They're not there in the classroom, they're at home. Our students don't have access to teachers in the same way that they had in the past. And so parents kind of have to fill in the gap in many ways to kind of push that. Even giving meaningful feedback. Just the other day, my daughter brought me a math problem, and it was one of those things where I couldn't help, but as a father, I had to find out who could help my daughter. you know, and so, you know, all of that is just being involved and being in a space. But it kind of goes back to kind of what's inherent in what most of us have talked about. And I think Mr. Arnold talked about it really well, but we just have to be intentional about being present. You know, the other part that I'll mention, and you can pass it on, but there's a whole social and emotional aspect of, you know, what parents will have to adapt to, connected with, you know, their children just being away from friends. And, you know, you have to be able to affirm your children during this time because they're mostly around you. And it can't be that you're focused on your work, they're focused on their school, then it's homework, dinner time, and time for bed. You have to create time to invest in your children and, you know, more intentionally, and really create the space to do that. So there's the academic side of the house, and then there's the social emotional side that we have to adapt to, you know, for the foreseeable future. So that's what comes to mind when I think about, you know, where fathers go in terms of supporting their kids during the pandemic.
Mr. Jewell?
Yeah, I would just kind of underscore again what Rodney said there about what we all really know is the parents are, you know, the first teachers that our kids have. And now we're in this new world, and it does sound very cliche, but we all really are in this together right now. When 70% of North Carolina's 1.5 million public school students are now learning remotely, we know that there is a big digital divide, though, that's going on right now in our rural communities, and even here in Wake County, where we don't have access to activity there. So, you know, obviously, it's just, you know, making sure that they're, you know, in that supportive role there with their child, and making sure that they're there to assist, keeping those relationships open. With that classroom teacher, even though they're not there in person, making sure they do reach out and communicate with them and use them as a critical resource there. The teachers are, you know, obviously adjusting and having the challenges that our parents and our students are having right now. And I'm glad we brought up the, you know, the piece about the social emotional health that everyone is really challenged with right now, because we're all struggling right now because this is in 6 months of at-home status for the most part, in a new reality of having to learn. We know that face-to-face instruction is always the best, but right now the most important thing is that we keep everyone safe and healthy, and that's with pretty much remote instruction for most of the state of North Carolina there. So, and realizing just keeping routines there's, you know, for your child. Many of their fathers, you know, obviously are working right now from home as well. So they're working, but they're also wanting to help their own kids there. So it's a balance. But we also have to remember that the virtual instruction is not to mirror what face-to-face instruction is about. There is going to be that, you know, that time of face-to-face instruction and group time. But we certainly don't expect our kids to be sitting in front of a computer for, you know, 6 or 6.5 hours a day. That there has to be that time away, that break time away, the downtime, the hands-on time, the outdoor time, and of course, the ever important family time. So, you know, just making sure that our fathers reach out, you know, continue that relationship virtually with the classroom teacher and with all the important stakeholders of that school, the school counselor and the principal and curriculum team.
Okay, thank you. And I want to point this next question to Mr. Arnold or Mr. Bird. As we think about fathers who are non-resident or non-custodial, so they're not necessarily living in the same household with the children every day, and may not have access to the virtual learning platforms in the same way. What type of advice are you all giving to fathers in your programs that are in those situations where they are having to co-parent and co-educate in the midst of COVID?
Okay, I'll go. For me, I would say, for one, breathe, pace yourself. There is no perfect approach to that. And being that you're a co-parenting, I can already pretty much understand a lot of the challenges just by, you know, just the experiences that I've heard with parents in the past and students as well. But I would say definitely, and Mr. Jewell touched on it, that word routine, to definitely, create a routine. And because of this COVID, and I know, a lot of things right now, it just seems like we're in isolation, creativity, continue to make things fun, be as creative as possible. Because one thing, and I'm learning from personal experience, that, you have to, because these kids are really, it's like we're influencing them. They are really depending on us, and they're watching us. They're watching our every move. They're watching how our mannerisms, our behaviors towards this thing. And so I would say definitely the biggest thing that you can do is just know that your child is dependent on you. And you're the biggest motivator right now. And you have to understand that and know that it's no perfect approach, and take care of yourself, your mental health, and do things like, for instance, with me and my daughters, we'll go walk the park. The whole family, we're taking everybody, we'll go walk the park at the end of the day, or we'll come home, instead of just sitting on the couch and watching movies, we'll sing, dance, whatever. But it's whatever to keep you, sane, keep yourself together, and take care of yourself. Make sure that your mental, health is straight. That way you can be better off and more effective with working with them as well. So stay in the fight. We're all in there. I don't have the right answers. I'm giving you my personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think I will, kind of piggyback or echo all that's been said. And I think for dads who are co-parenting, what we teach our dads in the day-to-day dads program is communication is very key. And I think, having a plan and having some sort of routine that has already been discussed with the other parent, and figure out what your role is going to be. And it may not necessarily be that you're going to be sitting there with the child at the computer, or that you will have the answers to any questions that they may have with any of their topics. It's just important to be present, check in, just ask how their day is, what are they struggling with. If there are things that they need that you are unable to get, then ask for help and figure out where you can, get those things that will be beneficial to your child or your children to be successful. To be very patient. Oftentimes, this is a new normal for everybody. So it's, patience is going to be very important. And this is also an understanding of having some understanding of child development, because every child develops differently. Every child learns differently. So, it will be, not to be overly assertive or upset if your children don't get or doesn't grasp something immediately. Just be there to just, again, be the motivator, be the cheerleader, and to really provide, that support to that child or to those children, and to the parent and to the other parent, because again, everybody's going through this. So it's also an opportunity to also, make sure that the other parent is getting some relief and having the opportunity to step away from the situation. And again, you figure out what that looks like together, so that, when you need to get on point with that, when you see some stress coming in. So, it's about working together, and this is not it's not everybody taking sides. Everybody's needing to come together for the benefit of the child to be able to receive their academic lessons in a manner that has never been done before. Mm-hmm. And again, parents are their children's first teacher, and so, we want you to be able to teach them, the character type traits that they need to be able to get through this process.
Okay. You all brought up some very great points. And so as we think about that, we have many fathers that I would assume are in situations where they are now needing to be their child's advocate, given the shift to remote learning. And so, Dr. Trice brought up the issue of kind of thinking about concerns with social and emotional learning. We know that there's some parents who have some other mental health concerns. I'm a parent of a Wake County student and feel like anxiety for my second grader is through the roof right now. What advice do you give to dads in terms of kind of thinking about the best path forwards in terms of advocating on behalf of their children in this remote environment? And so we can think about families who have children with IEPs or children who are displaying new behaviors that parents have not seen prior to us entering this new environment. What would be your advocacy advice for fathers? What's the best path forward?
So yeah, I think it's been stated. And I think Mr. Berg, who always has insightful things to say, hit it on the head. It's all about communication. So when you think about your own children and their social emotional well-being, whether it's mental health or special education, you want to be in constant contact with the teacher. You want to be in constant contact with the principal if needed. And I think it's important for parents to understand that the resources that were available in schools, those exact same resources are available now. They may look a little different, and they may operate a little differently, but if we don't ask for them, we certainly won't have access to them. So what I would say to parents also is, if you see a change in your son or daughter, I think it's time to speak up. There are, counselors, social workers, like I said, teachers, others that, are ready to kind of step in and be a support, not only to students, but to families. And I think it's important to kind of realize, well, the pandemic, coronavirus, is an issue. There's the other pandemic that we're also experiencing in this country related to race and racism that's impacting a lot of our children, right? And so they're at home, they're not able to unpack that with others. And so to Mr. Berg's point about communication and being, and the importance of it, it might not be a bad idea to have, daily family meetings to talk about what's on the mind of our children. They're on the computer a couple hours a day, and they're on their phones for a couple hours a day. They're watching the news and just all kinds of things popping up. And so we have to be, as fathers, in a space to help our children kind of unpack what's going on in the world related to COVID or others, and just be ready to talk and be real with our children. But at the same time, if services are needed at the school level, we have to be able to advocate, pick up the phone. So what I tell parents, make a list of who those people are, and you make sure you have their email and phone numbers, and check in just to introduce yourself. And if services are needed, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help, support our students and the families.
Thank you. Anyone else on that one?
I'm going to echo with my buddy Rodney there. I'm going to support what he said, and also to, this is a very unusual time that we are in, and I think again communication is going to be very key. And I used to teach and I used to facilitate workshops where we talked about how to advocate for your children, in the school system. And even though they're sitting at home in front of a computer, those advocacies, those things that you need to advocate for doesn't go away. They probably are more pronounced now than they were if they were sitting in the classroom. So you still do need to do the things that you would have done if your child was sitting in the classroom. So you need to know, have a relationship with the teacher, understand who are some of the support staff, whether it's the social worker, the guidance counselor, and the principal, and understand the hierarchy and who you need to talk to if you need to get answers to questions, or if there's a situation that needs to be addressed about what's going on with your children and their education. So those things are very key. And I think, again, dads need to be a part of that, whether they're custodial, whether they're residential, non-residential. It always is very helpful to have both parents to be present and advocating together so that, the school system is not, or anyone is not necessarily needing to talk to one or the other. You both should be present and able to advocate together. And particularly dads, and we know, and and having been in PTA for, like I say, 36 years, I've heard from out of the mouths of educators, that they prefer to talk to mom as opposed to dads, so dads have to just kind of really just insist on just being involved and being a part of whatever is being discussed, and also making the, making it so that they are a part of whatever is being discussed, or taking the lead on getting those answers on behalf of their children from the professionals in the school system that they need to talk to, without any situation happening.
Well, thank you all. We are nearing the end of some of our questions. I think that was very helpful. And as we continue to think about equity issues, we know that we have many fathers who may work quote unquote non-traditional schedules, or there may be issues around work that may not align with the academic schedule or the school schedule. So what kind of strategies, well, you all have given a lot of strategies, but what resources are available in the triangle, your favorite kind of go-tos that dads are still able to access if they're trying to think about how to best cope with the global pandemic, the racial pandemic, all of the things that we're currently faced with, and using this question from an equity standpoint. Any resources that you all would like to offer?
I think for myself, I'm a working dad, and my wife has a type of job where she can't be at home during the day. She works at a hospital, so I'm working and also trying to help my daughters, with remote learning. And one of the strategies that I have deployed is just to be in connection with other families who can check in and kind of help manage some of that work that comes along with that. And part of that is just forming groups, whether it's with other parents or community members, and if you have the type of schedule that won't allow you or doesn't align with the school's remote learning schedule, building coalitions, touching base with other parents, trusted parents that you may know in your school community, is an effective way to make sure you know what's going on, the policy changes, the practice changes. You think about attendance and grading and all of that. It's a task kind of understanding all that's changed and all that's going on. And when you work off schedule, or you're a working parent yourself, a lot of times, like I said, you just need to connect with other parents and talk through some of the changes that are at the schools, happening at the school and the district level. I work in a school system and have to do that because I can't be on top of everything in my job and in all of the changes. So I regularly, like I said, get on the phone or chat with some other fathers, and we just make sure that we have a complete and accurate understanding of the changes. Just yesterday I was talking about grading. What does that mean, and just making sure we all each understand what the impact that is on our children. So that's one strategy that I'd recommend to parents out there.
I'll chime in on that too. I'm gonna just kind of piggyback on the advocacy piece and collective organizing, and raising the voices of the community. Right now, particularly during this pandemic, we know that our schools and our communities have been under-resourced by our policymakers, and our elected officials are actually there to serve their constituents. The General Assembly is returning back to Raleigh next week. There's about $600 million of the First Cares money that is still not spent, that our schools are in desperate need of. The federal government is sitting on a package called the Heroes Package that would provide tremendous resources of PPE, would save thousands of public school education jobs if it could be passed by the Senate right now. So I would encourage your community members, our parents, our fathers to find your elected officials there, particularly in state government and your congressional districts, and of course your U.S. senators there, and urge them to make public education a priority right now, because we will be even in a greater crisis right now. And through collective action and organizing, we can make change. But time is ticking at the greatest essence. So, I would just encourage in the hub, those local schools are the hub, the community hub there, to stay connected, even though that you're virtual, to stay connected with your parents and your community members there, and to raise those voices to let them know that, our greatest resource that we have is our public schools. The foundation of and cornerstone of democracy is our public schools, an educated populace there. And we must continue to fight, particularly as we get close to Election Day.
And are there any resources that fathers can use to get connected? So I know one of the things.
Yes, I was going to say, obviously we want to make sure everybody's an engaged voter, but you can, obviously go on your government elections to find out who your elected representative is, just typing in your street address, your home address. There is an elected state member and a state senator that is elected to represent you and your families and communities, as well as a congressional representative. And of course, we have 2 U.S. senators in the state of North Carolina, as every state does. That is critical right now that they hear from us, because that's where that package, what we're calling now is a Heroes Package, which is billions of dollars that not only go to our schools, but our community and our municipal resources to sustain our communities and keep our families going.
Thank you. Mr. Arnold, Mr. Byrd, any resources or programs that dads can connect with during this time?
I was sitting here thinking, there's probably so many that I can't, it'd be difficult to really, say name right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Family Resource Center, we're really involved in this with equity work, and of course we also have our Fatherhood program. So I would say if you contact us at frcsa.org, that's our website, and then you can send us a message, and we will link you to the right place, or we may be able to help you directly.
Okay. Mr. Arnold?
Hey, you heard from the best. So I think for me, again, I know individuals and people who have, startup organizations or part of, some type of group. And again, I'll actually put my information down at the bottom. And if anybody want to contact me, I'll be more than happy to network them with those agencies and groups.
Cool. And some of the things that I thought about, go ahead, Dr.
I was just going to say, I would also like to add that on many school websites, they're doing a pretty good job of, updating all of the policy changes that impact children. So when you think about resources, daily or weekly emails that parents can kind of be involved with, those are critical resources now as we kind of go through this, remote learning experience as well. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. And that made me think, for the dads who are joined on with us, if you're connected to social media, following your child's school on Twitter or Facebook, oftentimes the schools will have a PTA account as well as a broader school account. So that may be another way to stay connected. And for those looking for childcare resources, the YMCA is offering some assistance in that way. So those are other things to kind of think about. And so as we wrap up our formal list of questions before we move into the chat box, kind of want to, because it got heavy here and we know that this is a very heavy time, but kind of thinking about something that you do as fathers. And so whatever your role is connected to being a father, what's a fun activity that you would recommend to dads, or your favorite activity that you have been engaging with your children with, or those who you act as a father figure to, since we've kind of been on lockdown or quarantined? Share with us.
For me, I'm more of an outdoor type person. And I know a lot of folks, especially like with the gyms being closed and all, and trying to trying to find ways of still being active. I get out, so we have a soccer field right down the street. My daughter, I got her into soccer. She plays, she runs. We run track in the morning. We do stretches and so forth. We paint. So I'm more so following her lead was what I'm trying to say. So, because she would definitely let me know, hey, I don't feel like this right now. She just started kindergarten this year. So you're talking about a mind that's growing and that's a sponge. So I find myself more so, following her footsteps. And so since then, I've taken music lessons, singing Moana and Disney, so whatever it calls for, just to see her happy, to see her spirit still, remain, it's mental health for me. So it's taking care of me, taking care of her. We're still staying healthy. She reminds me to take my vitamins in the morning and things like that. So, and vice versa. So we have like a little routine that we do. We check in, she checks on mommy because mommy's in the other room locked away. She's doing her work. But so we, with our routine and our systems, we look out for one another. And with her little mind and the way it's going now, I believe she's going to be in either human services or something, taking care of people after all this is said and done. But yeah, I just have fun, just have fun, keep it fun, whatever it is, be goofy. It's all right.
So Mr. Arnold will be holding our community paint and juice box party.
All of it.
That'll be fun. Cool. Anyone else?
Well, I have a 10th grader and a 5th grader. My 10th grader was highly involved with athletics, and with the pandemic, all of that came to a halt. So, just making sure she has space to kind of continue to kind of pursue her interest in athletics, but she's also taken an interest in writing. And one activity we do is we pick a writing prompt, and she'll start part of the story, and the next day I'll add to the story, and the following day she adds. And so it becomes this week-long experience where we're kind of creating this story together, which has been pretty fun. I try to throw little twists in there to make her respond to. With my 5th grader, she just started cooking. Watching YouTube channels and looking at recipes. So just getting in the kitchen with her. Usually she doesn't want me in there. She just wants me to buy the resources for her recipes. And but just like Mr. Arnold said, just taking the lead of your children, making sure that what makes them happy is something that they have access to. Yeah, I think it's just important to kind of be there and be present, and just in tune with what children are experiencing.
Okay, well, we'll be looking forward to the Trice Family Cooking and Conversations book that you can publish once this is all over.
There's a mean gumbo over here that you might want to taste.
Well, NC State has a machine, I don't know if it's open right now, I have to get back to you, where you could actually publish this book. We look forward to that. So, cool. Mr. Jewell, Mr. Bird, any fun activity recommendations?
I would say I am not a father, but I do believe that we have to take care of ourselves as well as individuals. So one of the things, and I tell everybody every time I do get out to, whether it's to the bank or to the grocery store, and I see somebody, they say, "How are you doing?" I say, "Well, we are in 6 months. Month 6 of stay-at-home status." So, we're all really going through emotional trauma right now. And I think taking care of your own mental health, what I try to do, Mr. Antoine will tell you, he was my gym buddy up the street at our gym. That has been closed for 6 months. I haven't been able to get to a gym like everybody else has to work out my frustrations and get my endorphins going. So I get out and take really long walks every day that I can to clear my head. And I did something that I've never done before. And I bought a book and downloaded on Audible. And it was for a team meeting. It was called The Ideal Team Player and How to Work Together in Teams. But it's about 5 hours, but I'd knocked it out in a couple of days of walking, right? And it just cleared my head, and it made me focus and pay attention, and it got me out of the house and got me away from the laptop. So, really, we just got to take care of ourselves as well and each other.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm not sure how Deron and Justin are going to follow up with participants, but if folks want to kind of drop your favorite book or podcast or something in the chat, maybe they can compile a list to share with dads to get out and walk and listen to books. So cool. Mr. Bird?
Well, my boys are grown, so I think, you know, when they were younger, one of the things that we used to like to do, there were two things that they really enjoyed. One was we would take the dog out for a very long walk, you know, it maybe about a mile or two. And that really was enjoyable to them because they got to really spend time with me and we got to really talk and do some other things. And then the second thing was that, you know, I always traveled a lot. So, you know, just if we were just in the car going somewhere, or just getting in the car, just taking a drive. And it would just be amazing because most of the time I wouldn't be able to get them to tell me anything if we were sitting around in the living room or, you know, we were just talking. But when they get in the car, they get very chatty and you get to learn a lot of things. So bonding seems to happen, you know, when they're sitting in the back seat of the car. But that's, just a very, you know, low cost kind of activity, and it's fun. And again, it's just about really creating and deepening those relationships with your children and being able to just have those kind of times where it's just you and them. And so that's what we used to enjoy to do when they were younger.
Yeah. Car rides are very beneficial, from the young ones that need naps to the older ones who need those chats. So thank you all for sharing those things. I think now we're going to move over into the chat box just to see if there are any questions. And Deron, if you want to tell me that's the correct. I think I only see one question so far. And it looks like that comes from Mr. Spencer. And it really focuses on this idea, similar to what Mr. Jewell just talked about a minute ago, of fathers being able to take care of themselves. So perceptions of help seeking. And so any suggestions or resources for fathers who could use help with emotional or mental health supports or connecting with social services or social service resources during this time. And as you all are thinking, maybe I'll share one. I know that Healing Transitions here in Raleigh, so for dads that are in the area, for dads who are in recovery on Saturday mornings, they've started a father support group. So it's for dads, by dads, at any point on the recovery journey. I'm not sure if it's open to the public right now given COVID, but that may be a resource, or at least connecting with some of the counselors at Healing Transitions. But are there any other agencies that you all can recommend to dads, particularly those in the Triangle, who may be seeking assistance with mental health concerns right now?
Yeah, I don't know the names actually, but again, if they want to email me, they can, and I will gladly put them in a direction. But with that particular person, I know that would be willing to help them.
Yeah, and I saw something on social media the other day. It was a clip of a young dad who's kind of walking through the street with his daughter. And he was saying to fathers, as we think about this perception or the stigma that's attached to mental health, he talked about the importance of being connected to service providers. Because he said fatherhood makes you realize things about yourself that you didn't even know were there. So as we think about dads who've experienced trauma, who may have experienced adverse childhood experiences in their own lives, sometimes, and particularly kind of now, given COVID, being in a very tight space and, you know, with kids all day, things can start to come up that may have been unaddressed before. And so I would also recommend perhaps connecting with Wake County Human Services for those who are in need of assistance and kind of thinking about places to reach out to.
Also a counseling service, I want to say CSERT, that's through NC State. And so they also provide counseling, and right now they are housed at the Crosby Garfield Center, and then they now are going to be expanding to other sites. If you email me through the website, I can give you the exact location. Or again, Wake County Human Services also should be able to give you the exact information for the Crosby Garfield building.
Thank you for that, Mr. Bird.
you know,
And I will also throw out their foundation. I'm sorry. I was just thinking, we have, NCAA has their own foundation. It's called the North Carolina Foundation for Public School Children, for any resources out there that our students might need, particularly if it's school supplies, backpacks, paying an eye doctor bill, anything like that. Our foundation will pay that. And I'll put it in the chat box, the email. That's North Carolina Foundation for Public School Children.
So a resource that I'd recommend with the Wake County Public Schools, and one that actually was the brainchild from Mr. Derek Bird, was the Community Equity Leadership Group. It's just a group of parents and advocates that come together on a monthly basis. Right now it's virtual. That again, just make sure that parents are up to date and up to speed on, you know, anything dealing with the school system. You know, it's just a group of parents. I'm the only Wake County employee in that space. And, you know, as questions come up, you know, I can often run down solutions or answers to questions that parents have about the education of their children. So if you're wanting to know more about the Community Equity Leadership Team, I'm going to put my information in the chat, and you can just follow up with me, and I can get you connected with the right person to join that group.
Thank you. And I see in the chat someone from Healing Transitions, Ann, who's one of their family engagement specialists, did write in that the father support group is on Saturdays from 3 to 4 p.m. and all are welcome to join via Zoom. And she's entering the information right now for Zoom for that meeting. And so I'm sure that Deron and Justin can add that to their list of resources. Also, if we have fathers who are on the line that are outside of the triangle, fatherhood.gov is a nice national resource that has videos and tip sheets and worksheets that may also be a nice starting point for those who may be joining us from other spaces. I see we have a question in here about PTA. And so someone asked the question, what can PTA members do to engage more fathers and perhaps offer more support? We have a very active PTA at our school, and we will be doing virtual events, but a lot of the members are moms. Dads seem to be silent members of that particular PTA. So any suggestions there?
I'll take that since I'm the PTA guru. There, you know, PTA.org, there should be a number of information about how to engage or increase male involvement in PTA. It really always starts with the mindset, you know, and I was the membership chair, the national membership chair some years ago, and having done a lot of workshops around this with a lot of our units and councils. It really has to start with the mindset, and having been engaged and involved in the local units here in Wake County, and at my son's school, you know, dads need to really have to be engaged meaningfully. You know, not just to come in and paint or, you know, put a nail in the wall. There needs to be some meaningful engagement with dad. You know, a lot of schools do a lot of, I can tell you one program that would be really great in getting dads more engaged will be, it's called Great Dad. It's called, okay, I got to think. I know a lot of schools do Donuts for Dads. Tony, that, you know, I've been out of it for a minute. There's a number of other programs that specifically are geared to dads to be involved in school. And I will have to get the names and put it in the chat because my age is showing right now. But, you know, I think it starts with the mindset. And I think, you know, there has to be an intentional recruitment of dads. You have to make dads understand why and help dads understand how they are, you know, how they benefit with being involved. And it just kind of starts from there. You know, oftentimes this, you know, PTA is very much, you know, a mother's kind of thing, but, you know, we have to really look at changing that perception again and changing that narrative that PTA is not just for moms, it's for all parents. And so, you know, and dads are equally, need to be equally just as involved and engaged and doing all the things that their moms are doing as well. So, you know, I just think it's a matter of asking, you know, really surveying your fathers and asking them how do they see themselves being engaged and make space for them to do that.
Mhm. Thank you for
That's
that.
it. Watchdogs. Thank you, whoever that is. Stephanie. Thank you.
Yes, and so if there's anyone joining us by phone and you can't see the chat, someone just entered the program. It's called Watchdogs, and so that's Dads of Great Students if you wanted to look into that further. We also had an update, the NC State Community Counseling and Education Research Center, and so the address for that, www.ced.ncsu and then CCER/services. Dr. Mark Grimmett in the College of Education is the person that is over that program. We also had a shout out in the chat from Dr. Anderson. So as we're thinking about some of the fun stuff that dads are doing or fun things that dads are doing with their kids, our own Duran Anderson has been creating obstacle courses for his children to get them out of the house and away from the school, away from the screen. So taking them to different community locations for exercise and logic and activity. So shout out to Duran for that. I also see we have another question here. Actually from Dr. Bullock, the head of the School of Social Work. We know the School of Social Work is co-sponsoring this event. So she says, given the racialized violence that we are experiencing across the country, do you have specific recommendations from your fatherhood experiences for those of us who want to take action and engage in advocacy that matters on a micro, meso, or macro level? Anybody want to speak to that? Advocacy related to racial violence, the racialized violence that we're currently experiencing.
That sounds like a good dissertation topic. I think on the micro level, from my experience as a father, but I also need to include my wife in that. We've been very explicit with our girls about issues of race and racism. And so at the micro level, we talk about, you know, the impact of race and racism, not only on our lives, but on their lives, and making sure that they can kind of see, you know, the world for what it is. So when I think about, you know, work or action that can be taken, you know, in families, I think we can kind of engage our young people in a way that just doesn't, you know, paint over or gloss over what's happening in the world. But at the same time, if you're in an agency, you know, I can speak to our school district. We have annually a young men's conference where we specifically teach parents about how race and racism shows up in schools, right? And so that might be another, you know, kind of micro activity that different agencies can do to make sure that, you know, they're investing in parents to kind of bring meaning to the
All right, so just a reminder again to all participants, if you could please continue to mute yourselves so that we're able to best hear our panelists. And if you have questions, please add those to the chat. Thank you. Dr. Trice, if you want to continue.
No, I'll just leave it there. You know, like I said, I think, you know, at the micro level, just being explicit with students or your kids, if you're working for an agency, you know, ways that you can support parents and being able to have these courageous conversations with their children, even in terms of, you know, how you can get your children involved with taking action in that space and not just being a, you know, a bystander, but, you know, what it means for them to actively participate in dismantling, you know, racist systems that, you know, are found in our different institutions.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I don't know if Dr. Bird, Derek Bird wants to talk about the REI work that y'all do with youth. That might be another opportunity.
You have to unmute yourself, Mr. Bird.
All right. Thank you, Rodney. I'm part of the Raleigh Organizing Against Racism. We are a group of anti-racist individuals who have organized to support the work of institutions and individuals and systems to organize around dismantling racism. And so we host and partner with the Racial Equity Institute out of Greensboro, North Carolina, to host racial equity trainings and groundwater. So we do that pretty much every month, and we have already since 2014 have over 1,000 or more individuals, particularly here in Wake County, who have participated and gone through those trainings, and we continue to do that work even more so now than before, given the recent events this last few months. So it is, again, an opportunity for parents and anyone else, particularly dads, to get involved, to really understand the historical foundations of racism, to understand internalized racial oppression, to understand how systemic and institutional racism impacts us every day. And I think, there is value to protesting and marching and lending your voice to a lot of these issues that are out there, but you really also need to understand, have a clear, concise, and complete understanding of what it is that you're fighting up against. Because it looks and feels different than what it did 10 years ago, what it did 20 years ago, what it did 50 and 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. So, you constantly have to educate yourself and be able to understand what it is that you're dealing with. And we help you to do that. And so I can put that information in the chat as well, if for anyone who's interested in learning more about those trainings.
Thank you. And I would just want to add to that, one thing that I've been recommending to parents with small children or school-aged children is to try to find ways to use children's books to begin to engage these conversations. We know that children's civic agency and their critical consciousness and critical thought begins at an early age. One of the books that we're currently reading in our house right now is Child of the Civil Rights Movement by Paula Young Shelton. So this is the daughter of Andrew Young. And it does a nice job of talking about both men and women who were active in the civil rights movement. And I think it's been a great way to spark conversation amongst my husband and children about how kids can begin to think of themselves as advocates. Also getting out to vote. And so if you are applying for an absentee ballot, let your kids sit down and be with you as you fill out that ballot. Let them put the stamps on and take it and put it in the mailbox so that they feel included as well. If you're going out to early vote and your family has the proper PPE and you want to take the kids to the poll with you, with social distancing in place, take them and let them see and be a part of that action. I think that would also help. But Mr. Bird entered the information on the Racial Equity Institute, so racialequityinstitute.com in the chat. I see that we also have suggestions for other agencies in the area. So Fathers Forever is another fatherhood support agency in the Raleigh area. And so their address for those on the phone is www.fatherforever.com. And allprodads.com. Allprodad, that's a really great site if you need tips on communication. So in terms of kind of having a difficult conversation, if you're a dad and you need to have some communication strategies for your children, they have excellent conversation starters, as well as some tips on what could be potential conversation stoppers. So all great things in the chat.
I also put on there how to contact your legislators, www.ncleg.gov. Then you just type in your address, your mailing address, and your legislators, what's based in the House and the Senate will pop up.
Sounds good. All right, well, I think we are going to wrap. I want to thank all of our panelists for all of your insight, and thank you all for having me to help to facilitate this conversation. And we're going to turn it back over to Wake County Child Welfare Services, Mr. Deron Anderson. I think we'll close this out. You have to unmute, Duran.
Now I'm showing my age, right? Thank you. So definitely was a great discussion. I learned a lot. I was taking down notes like crazy. Then I realized that I could have just been typing this information, but I wasn't. I just want to thank you, Dr. Clark-Coupe, for facilitating this conversation. And I was really really excited to hear about that Childs of the Civil Rights Movement book. Oh, I'm definitely into that one. I want to thank Derek Bird also. I'm taking into consideration the car ride because I know those, to kind of get out with our children. And also you were talking about the importance of child development and, and being your child's cheerleader and motivator. That really stuck with me. Also, we want to thank Dr. Trice, understanding social and emotional health. That if for those who are not familiar with this, the 5 protective factors, those are one of the factors, understanding social and emotional health. And Dr. Trice, you definitely talk about it. And also, I don't know if you can send that gumbo my way or what, but the recipe, I know some family recipes are secret, but
For a small fee.
I want to thank Mark. Mark, thank you for just that information regarding contacting your public officials, because a lot of us we don't really do that. We try to invoke change, but we know we have to get up there. We have to really get up there, talk to those, talk to our officials, write those letters, definitely get involved. And I'm also taking away that, hey, how you doing? I'm in the 6th month, right? We're someone asks you how you doing. Hey, I'm in month 6, and I'm also a fan of that Audible books. I would go, all day. I would listen to those Audible books. It's just like it's almost like cheating, but it's on a good walk, it's a great thing to do. And also, lastly, I want to thank Mr. Arnold. Now, Mr. Arnold, man, it was a pleasure just to kind of hear about your experiences with your children. I have a kindergartner, I have a 3rd grader, and you're right, being goofy. You got to be goofy sometimes. You gotta be silly and just get outside. Just look at the sun. Just kind of just get that energy into you. It's almost like a rejuvenation and sing those Disney songs. I'm a Moana fan. I know the whole song. Okay, so I definitely get you for that. So thank you all to all our panelists. Thank you to NC State University School of Social Work. It was a pleasure to kind of partner up with you. Also, thank you to North Carolina Association of Educators. Thank you to Family Resource Center South Atlantic. Thank you for being involved in this discussion. Thank you to all our listeners and our fathers out there. I know I have a lot of fathers that I work with. Thank you all for attendance. Also with Justin, a lot of fathers that Justin worked with as well. Thank you all, gentlemen, for attending. I hope you found value in this discussion. Also, if I would like to also provide you with, if you want more information about the discussions, and I wrote down every single last resource, everything. Actually, I didn't write it down. I copied from the chat and I pasted it into a Word document. So I was showing my age. But if you want to get in touch with myself, if you want to get in touch with Justin, I hope that I'll put it, just email me, duran.anderson@wakegov.com. That is my information, duran.anderson@wakegov.com. Thank you very much, Dr. Ruth. Also, lastly, and I forgot, the man behind the scenes, Dr. Ruth. He's back there. You guys probably don't see him right now, but he's a gentleman behind the scenes. And Kim, I didn't really get a chance to see her pop up, but those are the people making this thing happen, making this thing work. So thank you everyone for attending today. My final goodbyes is God bless, good night. Thank you.